Hi, Chris. It's Mom. Look, honey, I've got a lot of work to do, so I won't be home until late again. Just do the usual, you know, fix yourself a little something, anything you want. Oh, and I left some money for you on the counter. Use it for whatever you like. Now, Dad won't be home until Tuesday. He says hi. Oh, and somebody told me you quit soccer. Is anything wrong? Well, just leave me a note. Love you. Bye.
I'm Paul D., Director of Athletics here at the University of Miami. Been a student here, a member of the alumni, member of the administration, and I'm proud to have been asked to be the athletic director. The athletic director of a great program that had a football championship not once but 4 times over the last decade. Beginning in 1983 with the Orange Bowl victory over Nebraska, continuing with great victories in 1987, 1989, and 1991 against Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Alabama. The University of Miami football team has been superb. We've had a lot of tradition, being home at the Orange Bowl, where we haven't lost a game since 1985. But we've had more than that. We've had great people. We've had great players. We've had great coaches. They're great to have been around. I'm proud to have had the opportunity to know them. But we've had another great friend, the great friend, Nike. They've been with us since the beginning. They've been with us from the ground up, and we want to thank Nike for being with us all the way. The University of Miami and Nike are proud to present this Decade of Dominance video. It's been a great decade. There'll be plenty more, and we, along with Nike, hope to continue to just do it.
When I first took the job at Miami, I had made the statement after a lot of study and analysis that the University of Miami had the same natural resources, the same ingredients that Southern Cal had had for years and years. The only subtropical university in the United States, natural matriculation from people from the northeast of the United States to Miami. Most every kid we recruited from the east had a grandmother, father, uncle that was living somewhere in South Florida.
The thing that I really take pride in our days at Miami is that we were able to recruit players that went on and had a lot of success, even though they weren't highly recruited players. Players like Russell Maryland, who really didn't have any scholarships. Jimmy Jones ended up being outstanding players for University of Miami.
You've got to have leadership within, and you've got to have people that maybe they don't play all the time, but they got to be happy with their roles. And the thing about this football program is it's a close group.
There was a lot of built-in things that were already in place, and what was needed was, of course, the strength and the conviction and the belief that it could be done, and then the continuity to make it happen.
Once we, obtained the credibility nationally, and once we got the visibility that we had after the national championship and the near national championships, we were able to go out throughout the country and recruit some of the top players in the country.
That's a neat thing about this. It's such a family, and it's a family atmosphere. And we've got players that do so many things around here. I mean, we've got people that go out in the community and do a lot of things. We've got players that deal with children all the time.
I think this is not only because of the work and the effort of our assistant coaches, but also because of University of Miami itself. We really didn't have to work that hard on some of those players because they wanted to be in Miami.
That's what this program's all about, not only on the football field, but what they do off the field.
Perhaps no team in the history of college football has been as dominant a force through a decade of excellence as the University of Miami Hurricanes. Beginning a national championship tradition with a remarkable win in the 1984 Orange Bowl game, The Canes, under the tutelage of 3 different coaches, established one of the most innovative and successful programs ever to compete on the college gridiron. The ensuing 10 years would find the Canes garner 3 more national championships, become perennial contenders for the crown, graduate an incredible array of talented players into the professional ranks, and more importantly, graduate a consistently high ratio of its players into meaningful and productive members of society. While football pundits will focus in on the accomplishments of the 1983 Hurricanes, a team that was the first to reach college football's pinnacle by scoring an improbable victory over a seemingly invincible Nebraska team to capture the national crown on January 1st, 1984, the foundation for the Hurricanes dynasty was laid in an era just prior. The Canes began their monumental rise with several significant steps, signature games, that would serve as a springboard for the tremendous run that would follow.
We had 2 major ingredients that gave us the natural resources to have an opportunity to bring this program to the national level. The first one, of course, was the recruiting that Lou Saban had done in the previous 2 years. When we got down there were some excellent young players on the football team, and that certainly gave us a platform from which to build. The other thing, which had been a curse for the University of Miami for years and years in the minds of the faint-hearted, was this overwhelming schedule. And that really proved to be something that it would have taken years and years for me to develop had we had to start in 1979. The first and most important win probably for the University of Miami history was back in 1979 when we went up to State College to play Penn State. And we were 3 wins and 4 losses at that time. And I had made a decision early on that Jim Kelly would not become the starting quarterback until our offensive football team was capable of winning. And we made that decision to start Jim Kelly against Penn State on Friday night prior to that game. Jim went out along with our offensive and defensive football team and took the measure of Penn State in State College, and was the pivotal game for the rise of the University of Miami football program.
The 1983 campaign began with anything but a championship ring. The Canes would open the season on the road against arch-rival Florida on September 3rd, and the result looked as far from a dress rehearsal for the beginnings of a dynasty as a team could get. 7 Hurricane turnovers showcased the team's inexperience, and the Gators came away with a convincing 28-3 victory. Was there any way possible to sense a title was awaiting on the horizon?
We had a coaching staff and a football team that had been instilled with the idea that every time we start a season, its goal is to win the national championship. And regardless of me trying to mitigate the situation, they had not changed their goals and ambitions. And no, I did not give us much of a chance to win the national championship that year. But as the team progressed and got better, I made the statement to the team, I don't know how good this football team can be. Only history will tell.
That sloppy effort in the opener marked the only time the Canes would lose all year. Miami began a roll the following week, stuffing Houston 29-7, and following with a 35-0 shellacking of Purdue. That led to one of the significant turning points in the history of the program, as Howard Schnellenberger and company tangled with the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame at the Orange Bowl. Bernie Kosar was brilliant before a national television audience and a crowd of 52,000, connecting on 22 of 33 passes for 215 yards. The Canes' defense recorded its second consecutive shutout and stretched its string of scoreless quarters to 11 by blanking the Irish. Sparked by the play of freshman defensive back Reggie Sutton, who had 13 tackles and blocked 2 field goal attempts in the game, the Canes had suddenly risen to prominence with a stellar performance that stamped them as a college football force.
Our football team had no doubt that they could go out and take the measure of Notre Dame. And they played with a confidence that was even new to us, and we had played with confidence for game after game. That game gave our young football team confidence and esprit de corps that would not be challenged the balance of the year.
Miami rolled up wins over Duke, Louisville, Mississippi State, Cincinnati, and West Virginia before surviving a major scare from East Carolina. That set the stage for a showdown with Florida State in Tallahassee in what turned out to be one of the most thrilling games in the long history of the rivalry. Miami began a game-winning drive with 2 minutes 12 seconds remaining, highlighted by Keith Griffin's 20-yard run that would set the stage for the game's dramatics. A heroic atonement by kicker Jeff Davis, who had 2 earlier misses but made amends with the game on the line.
Waiting for the ball. Here. Snap, down, kick, up, it is good! Miami leads 17-16.
The game winner from 19 yards away brought the Canes to 10-1 and earned them the right to meet top-rated Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. Nebraska was believed to be the best college team to suit up in 2 decades, featuring an unstoppable running game and a cast of all-stars at virtually every position. But the 4th-ranked Hurricanes hit the heavily favored Cornhuskers with a haymaker, square in the face. Miami's outsized, underrated defense held Nebraska's offensive juggernaut at bay. The Canes played inspired D, led by Orange Bowl defensive MVP Jack Fernandez, a reserve linebacker filling in for injured Ken Sisk. After snuffing Nebraska's opening drive, Miami's passing attack was brilliant. Bernie Kosar set a new Orange Bowl passing yardage record with precision strikes to Eddie Brown and Stanley Shakespeare, and a pair of scoring passes to tight end Glenn Dennison. Before Nebraska's potent offense would awaken, the Canes had put together a 17-0 lead and set the stage for one of the most electrifying upsets in college football history. It would boil down to a single gut-wrenching play as the Cornhuskers rallied furiously to pull within 31-30 and put themselves into a position to either shoot for a tie and preserve the national title or gun for the win by going for a 2-point conversion. To his credit, Tom Osborne opted for the latter and helped the Hurricanes make history in the process.
You're right down to the guts of it right here, friends. 31-30, going for 2. Gill takes, looks, rolls, throws, deflected away! Deflected away! Miami leads 31-30. They tried for 2 and didn't make it.
With a flick of Ken Calhoun's wrist, Miami's impossible, incredible, unbelievable dream came true. The win, coupled with Georgia's upset of Texas in the Cotton Bowl, catapulted the Canes to the top spot in the season's final polls, capping a string of 11 consecutive victories and beginning an era that would point the Canes toward the apex of the college football world. That first title was followed by a somewhat tumultuous off-season that saw Schnellenberger opt to move on to an ill-fated coaching job with a Miami entry in the United States Football League. The search for a replacement for Howard began within the Canes coaching ranks, but ended with the signing of an energetic taskmaster from the Oklahoma State program, Jimmy Johnson. Athletic Director Sam Jankovich's search was both thorough and strenuous, and at first polarized a Hurricane coaching staff that was facing the monumental assignment of defending the national championship.
Even though I knew it was going to be a difficult transition, taking over the job with the previous staff, and especially taking over the job after the previous staff had won the national championship, it was really where I wanted to be. We had a program that was capable of winning the national championship. It was in a locale that I enjoyed, being on the beach, on the water, in a resort-type atmosphere and also in the city, and that attracted me. And so my decision was very easy. It's where I wanted to be.
Johnson's task was made tougher by an impossible schedule featuring 3 games away from home in just 12 days. The Canes began 1984 with an appearance in the Kickoff Classic, meeting the preseason #1 Auburn Tigers and talented tailback Bo Jackson on August 27th. There was some credibility to the argument that Auburn had a legitimate claim to the '83 national crown, as Miami leapfrogged the Tigers in the championship poll. Sparked by running back Alonzo Highsmith's 140 yards on 22 carries, the Canes and Bernie Kosar prevailed in a bragging rights game, beating Auburn 20-18, and turning to ashes the notion the Tigers should have won the crown the previous season. However, Coach Johnson and the Hurricane players had little time to savor their victory. 5 days later, they would play one of the most emotional, exciting contests in Hurricane history, battling the arch-rival Florida Gators in front of the second-largest crowd ever gathered in Tampa Stadium. Down by 1, with only 41 seconds remaining, Bernie Kosar drove the Canes from their own 28-yard line right down the field with passing precision. On 3rd down at the Gator 12 with 12 seconds remaining, Johnson and Kosar decided to roll the dice, and instead of going for a field goal for the lead, Bernie lofted a beautiful pass to Eddie Brown for the score, surprising everyone in Tampa Stadium, including the Gator defense. In one of the great comebacks in Miami history, Kosar drove Miami 72 yards in 5 plays in just 34 seconds. And then Tolbert Bain returned Florida's desperation attempt 59 yards to provide the final 32-20 margin. However, Miami would drop 2 of its next 3 games, losing at Michigan and again to Florida State at the Orange Bowl on September 22nd. It had become clear to Coach Johnson the Canes would have to regroup, that maintaining the high standards set by the '83 team would require a serious look at the defensive side of the ball.
Because of the firepower we had on offense with Bernie Kosar, Alonzo Highsmith, Melvin Bratton, some outstanding players, we were able to go out and initially have success because we could score points. But on the other side of the football, defense, we had graduated, or the team before had graduated 9 players, and we had to completely revamp the defensive football team, and that eventually caught up with us.
The Canes would move to 8-2, including a 31-13 victory over Notre Dame. But things began to cave in defensively in the second half of a November 10th game against Maryland, a game that saw Miami rush to a 31-0 halftime lead before falling 42-40. That loss was followed by the now famous Hail Flutie pass play, a last-second Hail Mary that shall forever live in infamy in the hearts of Hurricane football fans, as Heisman Trophy winner Doug Flutie pulled off a miracle to beat Miami 47-45.
6 seconds left to go in the game at the 48-yard line. Flutie is back. 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. This game is over. Hail Mary, deep it is. It is caught for a touchdown. I don't believe it. Boston College has won.
A third straight high-scoring loss to UCLA in the Fiesta Bowl, 39-37, brought the Canes to 8-5, but left Coach Johnson with reason to be optimistic about the status of the program.
I was obviously concerned, but I felt like for the long haul we were going to be fine. I knew once we made the changes at the end of the season and put together the staff that really wanted to be there, that had the cohesiveness and had the loyalty that we were looking for, I knew that we would be able to get the job done. Miami was going to attract outstanding athletes, and then on top of that, I knew that we were going to be able to win with the schedule that we had.
The 1985 season began before the largest crowd ever to witness a college football game in the state of Florida, as 80,227 turned out at the Orange Bowl for the season opener with the Florida Gators. Miami debuted a new starting quarterback in Vinny Testaverde, but the quarterback duel that afternoon would favor the Gators' Kerwin Bell. The Gators took advantage of 5 Miami turnovers, and the season began on an ominous note as Florida defeated the Canes 35-23. It would be Miami's last home loss of the 80s and beyond. That year, Coach Johnson rallied his club to wins over Rice, Boston College, East Carolina, and Cincinnati before meeting Oklahoma on the road in Norman in what turned out to be one of the most important wins of the decade. Sparked by pinpoint passing from Vinny Testaverde, who accounted for 270 yards, UM was able to march through the top-rated Sooner defense like a knife through butter. The key play in the game came early, as UM established its superiority with a 56-yard scoring pass from Testaverde to Michael Irvin, a bomb that would help trigger the only loss of the Sooners' '85 campaign. Jerome Brown anchored a defense which shot down the vaunted Sooner attack and knocked heralded quarterback Troy Aikman to the sidelines, as Miami handed eventual national champion Oklahoma a 27-14 defeat. In the annual matchup with Florida State, Miami traveled to Tallahassee and rallied from 10 points down to win the ball game with 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. Michael Irvin scoring on a 30-yard pass from Testaverde, and then Brett Perriman tallying with the clincher from 2 yards out. Testaverde's 4th touchdown pass of the game. It was a win that set the stage for the Canes to make their second bid for a national title as they swept by Notre Dame 58-7 to end the regular season. Vinny Testaverde was masterful, throwing for 356 yards on 22 of 32 before yielding to Jeff Torretta, who would also toss a late touchdown pass. Running back Melvin Bratton and wideout Willie Smith led the offense, while defensive end Danny Stubbs accounted for 3 quarterback sacks, and UM safety Benny Blades picked off a Steve Berline pass and raced 61 yards for a score. For the second time in 3 years, the University of Miami found themselves playing on New Year's Day with a chance at the national championship. But the Canes' hopes for a second title were dashed as they ran into a Tennessee team in the '86 Sugar Bowl that put immense pressure on Testaverde and brought the Canes to their knees in a convincing 35-7 win.
In our first opportunity to win a national title in the Sugar Bowl, we came up short, but really, we only had one senior starting that year, and he was injured in that game, Kevin Fagan. For that reason, I knew that our year was going to be the next year and the year after, and we were overrated at that time in the Sugar Bowl, even though we had the opportunity. I felt like that we had the talent on our football team, that we were going to be good for a long time to come.
After coming within one win of a second championship, Coach Johnson felt he had all the pieces in place to win the crown in 1986. With players like Vinny Testaverde, Warren Williams, Melvin Bratton, Alonzo Highsmith, Michael Irvin, the Blades brothers, Jerome Brown, Bill Hawkins, and a depth chart that would later produce an abundance of NFL stars, Johnson knew this team was ready to contend for a title.
Well, I really think the '86 team was as fine a college football team as I've ever been around. We had outstanding individuals that gave us great play all year long. Jerome Brown was an inspirational leader and a great football player. Vinny Testaverde was a great player throughout the year, and then you had the wide receiver, Brian Blades, you had Michael Irvin, Benny Blades, a great free safety, just an awesome individual physically, 215 pounds, and he could run a 4.4. We felt like we had as fine a collection of talent and as fine a collection of winners, of competitors, guys that really wanted to give it their all to win, that I'd ever been around in all my years of coaching.
team more than lived up to its billing, pounding South Carolina 34-14 to open the season behind Benny Blade's 2 interceptions, before toppling Florida in Gainesville 23-15 on September 6th. After struggling offensively through a first half that saw Mel Bratton's 24-yard touchdown run produce the only Hurricane points, Miami used a fumble forced by Winston Moss to thwart a Gator drive and recapture the momentum, cashing in on a 20-yard Bratton jaunt that helped ice the game for Miami. That set the stage for a 1-versus-2 showdown against top-ranked Oklahoma at the Orange Bowl on September 27th. It was in this contest that Vinny Testaverde began to stake his claim to the Heisman Trophy.
Vinny looking, being pursued. Vinny breaks a tackler, runs with the football at the 45, still stays on his feet at the 40, stays on his feet, now getting a block on the near side. Testaverde gets a block at the 40, down to the 35, the 30, the 25. My goodness, what a run! Vinny Testaverde!
The Canes' defense would also come to the forefront in one of the year's major hurdles as Jerome Brown, Danny Stubbs, and middle linebacker George Myra Jr. combined for 45 tackles, and Michael Irvin's 2 touchdown pass receptions from Testaverde helped offset a Sooner score by Keith Jackson as the Canes won it 28-16. Three convincing wins came before Miami met Florida State and had to rebound from an opening scoring drive by the Noles. The game featured one of the classic Testaverde plays as he completed an all-out scramble with a scoring pass to Alonzo Highsmith that put the Canes up 14-7. For 3 quarters, FSU played Miami tough, but it would be all Hurricanes in the 4th quarter with 20 unanswered points in a 41-23 win. Many considered this to be one of the finest Hurricane teams ever, led by Miami's first Heisman Trophy winner that would hold down the nation's #1 ranking for 15 weeks. It was a unit that featured All-American Jerome Brown and future Thorpe Award winner Benny Blades, and 3 of the first 9 picks in the ensuing NFL draft. Miami would run out the string with victories over Pittsburgh, Tulsa, and East Carolina to set the stage for a unique national title showdown with second-ranked Penn State. The game was so big, it was moved to January 2nd, so the title could be decided in a Fiesta Bowl that would not conflict with any other bowl game. It was Jimmy Johnson's second crack at a championship, and the Canes were strong favorites. But in a defensive struggle, Miami continued to self-destruct, turning the ball over repeatedly and falling behind 14-10 before getting the ball back with 3 minutes to play at their own 23. Vinny Testaverde would complete 6 consecutive passes, including a 4th and 6 completion to Benny Blades for 31 yards from Miami's 37-yard line. However, with 18 seconds to go and the Canes knocking on the door for a national championship, perhaps the most devastating turnover of the decade developed as Testaverde was poised to take the team in for a win.
Vinny taken. Here comes the season. Throwing it, intercepted. It's all over.
As disappointing as the loss in the '87 Fiesta Bowl was, the prognosis for the Canes in the season that would follow was certainly positive. There would be a change at the quarterback position as Steve Walsh, the heady sophomore, took over the reins from Vinny Testaverde. It was a team determined not to fall a game short of a championship, and one Jimmy Johnson felt had every capability of going all the way.
I think the '87 team really was able to achieve what they did because they not only had talent, but they had the drive to go out and be the best they could be. We really were disappointed going into that season because the year before we had an undefeated regular season but lost the Fiesta Bowl, and that loss probably motivated our football team to go out and win them all, and that's what we did. We won 12 ball games and became national champions, even though we probably didn't have as talented a football team as what we had in '86.
Steve Walsh debuted with a perfectly engineered 31-4 win over the Florida Gators at the Orange Bowl. Playing behind an inexperienced offensive line, Walsh connected early with Brian Blades for a first-quarter score that would prove to be the game winner. It would be the last contest in this intrastate rivalry, as the Gators could no longer find room for Miami on their schedule. The Canes followed that win with a resounding triumph over Coach Johnson's alma mater, trouncing Arkansas 51-7 at Little Rock. The season's key game, and the measure of this team's success over the years, came in the season's third game against Florida State. On the road and on the ropes in Tallahassee, Miami found themselves down 19-3 with just a minute remaining in the third quarter of 1987's Game of the Year. The Canes then staged a characteristic fourth-quarter rally to knock off the fourth-rated Noles, courtesy of two huge scoring plays to Michael Irvin. The second, this 73-yard strike from Walsh put the Canes on top 26-19. But it took some dramatics for Miami to emerge with this win. Like the original national title, this one as well would hinge on a breakup of a two-point conversion try after Florida State scored with 42 seconds to go.
Trying for two. Backs are set in the eye. McManus on the take. Keeps, looks, throws, end zone. It is intercepted and knocked away by McDowell, and Miami has held him. And Miami will take the football.
The Canes rolled through 6 straight opponents before shellacking Notre Dame to move to 10-0. The shutout of the Irish came just before the second-ranked Miami contingent went against 8th-rated South Carolina in what turned out to be a much tougher game than was anticipated. Amidst bizarre weather conditions at the Orange Bowl, Miami needed a 56-yard scoring pass from Walsh to Brian Blades in the third quarter to survive a scare in a 20-16 win. That victory set the stage for another 1-versus-2 matchup against top-rated Oklahoma, a team Jimmy Johnson had defeated in the 2 previous seasons, this time in the Orange Bowl Classic. With sophomore quarterback Steve Walsh hitting on 18 of 30 passes and senior Melvin Bratton gathering in 9 aerials, Miami knocked off the Sooners 20-14 to win the national crown for the second time in 5 years. Reserve linebacker Bernard Tiger Clark, a fill-in starter, duplicated 83 Orange Bowl hero Jack Fernandez's feat of capturing game MVP honors, making 14 overall stops, 12 of those unassisted, as the potent Sooners offense was limited to 255 total yards. As the clock expired on the Sooners' hopes of a championship, Coach Johnson received the traditional Gatorade shower, symbolic of an unwavering commitment to excellence that had finally brought his Miami club the brass ring, their first undefeated season, and found them atop the college football world in 1987. '88 would mark Johnson's final season as the mentor for the Hurricanes. Coming off a national title, expectations were naturally high, but the Canes would have to contend with yet another difficult schedule and the loss of some premier players. The season began at the Orange Bowl against arch-rival FSU, and Steve Walsh left the Noles with little to cheer about as he and his teammates soundly thrashed the country's top-rated team 31-0. Miami opened up with Walsh hitting Cleveland Gary for 21 yards, and the Canes were off to the races. It was 17-0 by the half, and backup quarterback Craig Erickson came on and salted away the triumph with a fourth-quarter touchdown pass, giving Canes fans a quick glimpse into what the future would hold as he would transition into the starting quarterback spot the following year. The Canes moved to 2-0 with one of the most dramatic wins of the decade in the second ball game, beating Michigan on the road 31-30. The furious fourth-quarter rally staged by the Canes in Ann Arbor was keyed by the combination of Steve Walsh and Cleveland Gary, who connected on this brilliant 48-yard scoring pass with 2:58 left in the game.
Got a block at the 30, the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5. He's over! It's 30-28. Oh, my!
A Carlos Huerta field goal with 43 seconds left sealed the win. After wins over Wisconsin and Missouri, Miami traveled to South Bend to take on the Fighting Irish. Again, the Canes staged a late comeback on the road against a top-notch team. But just as the dynasty began with a favorable outcome on a two-point try, this time it was Jimmy Johnson faced with the burden of trying for a pair to avoid a tie.
Slot right is Brown, Dawkins is left, Chudzinski to the left-hand side, Gary the running back. Walsh taking, Walsh looking, Walsh looking, Walsh throwing, it is knocked down.
It was not to be, and Miami was dealt its first regular season loss in 37 games, 31-30, in a thriller that saw Walsh toss for 424 yards. Four routes followed before the Canes survived a scare against Arkansas, and then went on to trounce BYU. The 10-1 record was good enough to earn a berth in the Orange Bowl, but for only the second time in 6 years, they would not be playing for a national title.
After all of the success of the team in '86 and '87, the national championship in '87, 1988 was a year where almost every game was the biggest game for our opponent. In every stadium that we went to, it was electricity, and it was an exciting year. We had the great win at Michigan. We had the very disappointing loss to Notre Dame. We felt like we should have won the ball game, but that's the way games go. And we went on from there and really went undefeated after that Notre Dame loss. The program was such that we had outstanding players. We probably had our best recruiting year that year after the 1988 season. I decided to go on to another level. I felt like I'd accomplished what I wanted to accomplish at the University of Miami. And for that reason, I went to the Dallas Cowboys. I really felt like, though, I left the University of Miami with some great players and some great individuals.
The Canes' defense was supreme in the Orange Bowl matchup with Nebraska, holding the Huskers to 3 points in a convincing victory. Leonard Conley provided the spark with 40 rushing yards and 4 catches for 94 more. The Canes held the Huskers to 80 yards on the ground and 55 through the air as they ended the year 11-1 in what would be Jimmy Johnson's final season with the team.
I really don't keep it a secret how I feel about University of Miami and South Florida. I've had the opportunity to play and coach at some outstanding universities and also professional football. But I really believe the days in Miami were the happiest days of my life. I really enjoyed living there, and I really enjoyed coaching University of Miami. I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed all the different ethnic groups and the resort atmosphere. It was really a great situation, and probably the most rewarding thing was the individuals that I was dealing with. We had some people that had gone through some adversity and accomplished some great things. And for that reason, to this day, I always call University of Miami my school. It's the best that I've ever been around.
In 1989, Dennis Erickson would arrive, and again there was some controversy surrounding the choice of coaches. Offensive coordinator Gary Stevens loomed as a very viable candidate for the job, but athletic director Sam Jankovic offered the position to the former Washington State mentor.
There was a coach here on the staff that the public wanted, which is understandable, and when somebody new comes in, getting to know the players and all that was very difficult. But once we got into it, it wasn't all that bad. But not only being accepted as far as the coach is concerned, we went to the one-back set, and a lot of people didn't like that. So through spring football, the first year was a very difficult time for us.
Erickson's innovative one-back attack became the foundation of the Miami offense, and his first encounter as the Canes coach was about as successful as you could want. Miami shellacked Wisconsin 51-3 in a regionally televised game that saw Wisconsin score first and never thereafter. Craig Erickson completed 17 of 37 in his starting quarterback debut as Miami thoroughly dominated in all categories.
Well, it's always interesting when you're in a new program to play that first game, and you didn't know how your players were going to react, or in this particular situation, our players were a lot better than where I'd been before, and to go in there and see them play with the intensity level that they played at was really an unbelievable feeling, a feeling of relief knowing that they were going to play hard for you all the time.
Victories over Cal, Missouri, and Michigan State would follow, with the game at East Lansing being relatively tough, a 26-20 win that saw the second-rated Canes overcome hostile confines and injuries, including one to starting quarterback Erickson, who was replaced by freshman Gino Torretta. The final margin of victory was provided by 2 fourth-quarter field goals by the reliable Carlos Huerta, a one-time walk-on, who had kicked his way into the hearts of Hurricane fans and delivered in the clutch for the Canes coaches. Miami would move on to wins over Cincinnati and San Jose State before traveling to Tallahassee to meet the 9th-rated Florida State Seminoles. In a perfectly forgettable ball game, 6 Canes turnovers proved their undoing as FSU prevailed 24-10. Gino Torretta was picked off in the game's second play, and the Canes' self-destruction seemed to put their national championship hopes on hold as the Noles blanked Miami for the game's final 3 quarters.
That's really when I understood the rivalry. You don't understand it until you're involved in a game, and I didn't understand it until we played that day and saw the emotion of the game and the emotion of the fans. And now, 5 years later, of course, I understand the tradition of that game, and there's no rivalry like it. It's a great rivalry as far as a clean rivalry is concerned, but when you got 2 of the best football programs in the country playing against each other, it becomes a real big rivalry, particularly when you're in the same state.
But the Canes' resiliency has always been a trademark, and Miami rebounded from the loss with a vengeance, winning the rest of their ball games before a November 25th showdown against number 1 ranked and defending national champion Notre Dame at the Orange Bowl.
Of all the games that I've been involved in, that had to be the biggest for me. Just remembering the fans before the football game. I don't think I've ever seen the Orange Bowl like it, and we've had some great games in the Orange Bowl since then. But that Notre Dame game was just mystifying, the presence of the people and the game itself. I don't think I've ever been around a crowd like that and a feeling of a team like that.
Miami pounced on the Fighting Irish. Erickson to big play receiver Dale Dawkins late in the first quarter being the key.
Dawkins and Lamar Thomas are sliding to the wide side left. Back is Erickson on the straight back drop. Throws it deep over the middle. Dawkins caught it! 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown Miami! 55 yards!
Later, after a Bernard Clark interception, it would be Stephen McGuire, the powerful Canes fullback, who would take one over from 5 yards out to give the Canes a halftime advantage, 17-10.
3rd down and goal at the 5. Ball at the left hash mark. Miami going to our right. The turn, the give, the play action. McGuire. Touchdown standing up.
The second half began with Dawkins gathering in his second scoring pass of the game, and the record crowd of 81,634 would see the Miami defense rise to the occasion, blanking the Irish in the second half and giving rise to hopes the national title would not elude Miami in Erickson's first year.
We played extremely well. I think 3rd and 40 or whatever it was to Randall Hill in the third quarter that kept a 12-minute drive going was kind of the key to the win. But that win had to be the biggest in my coaching career without a doubt.
Miami would go to the Sugar Bowl to face Alabama and quickly silence the Crimson Tide partisans. The Canes' offense was at its potent best. Craig Erickson passing for 250 yards, and Conley and McGuire each rushing for 80 yards plus as Miami made its early lead stand up. The 33-25 win would catapult Miami to the top spot in the rankings, and the Canes had their 3rd title in 7 years, truly establishing themselves as the team of the 80s, while Dennis Erickson became only the 2nd coach in NCAA history to win a national championship in his first year.
Of course, a lot of things had to happen that day. Colorado had to get beaten. We had to win that football game for us to be the national champions. And looking up on the scoreboard to see the score of the other game in the Orange Bowl was something that I remember all the time. And once we saw those results, obviously, we knew that we had a chance to win a national championship. And it's a great feeling anytime you win a national championship. I mean, there are a lot of coaches out there and players that have never had that opportunity. It's very difficult to accomplish, and we accomplished it that day.
In 1990, the Canes again appeared primed to repeat as national champions. But they ran into a buzzsaw in the season opener as they couldn't stop eventual Heisman Trophy winner Ty Detmer and the Brigham Young Cougars in an unlikely 28-21 loss on the road to open the season. The club would rally for 4 consecutive wins before stumbling at Notre Dame 29-20 and falling out of contention for the national championship with their 2nd loss. But the highlight of the 1990 regular season came against Florida State before the 2nd largest crowd in Orange Bowl history. The Hurricanes rolled to a 24-0 first-half advantage behind a solid running attack that would amass 334 yards on the ground against the 2nd-ranked Seminoles. The 31-22 victory would deny FSU coach Bobby Bowden his 200th career win. Miami would give indication of their supremacy over future Big East Conference teams by trouncing Pittsburgh, Boston College, and Syracuse in succession, before closing out the regular season with a victory at San Diego State. That led to a Cotton Bowl appearance against Southwest Conference champion and 3rd-ranked Texas. That would give indication the 4th-ranked Canes may just have been the best team in the country at the time. The signature play of the game was this completion from Erickson to Randall Hill that typified the Canes' play in a convincing 46-3 win. It was the most impressive performance by any team on New Year's Day 1991 and set the stage for another Miami championship. The 1990 Hurricanes set school records for total offense and passing yardage, and its defensive unit featured All-Americans Maurice Crum and Russell Maryland. Maryland went on to become Miami's first Outland Trophy winner and the #1 pick in the NFL draft. He anchored a Miami defense that allowed opponents under 80 rushing yards per game. In 1991, Miami was poised to garner title honors once again. Gino Torretta won a spirited competition for the starting quarterback spot and would prove his worth through an unbeaten campaign that would lead to national championship #4.
Keys of that season where we weren't supposed to be very good, and that year we just got better and better all the time because we had some young guys that improved, and of course the key was a Florida State game up in Tallahassee where we ended up winning it by 1 point when they missed a field goal at the end, and that was just a hard-fought game like every game. And to win it a 2nd time, to beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl, probably the feeling for that national championship was much more of a feeling that we really accomplished something than maybe the first time.
Miami had joined the Big East Conference in football, but began the season with a nationally televised confrontation against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Early in the first quarter, The Canes demonstrated the explosive nature of the 91 team's offense.
Back to throw. Gino bomb. Copeland. He's got it. 45-50. 40. He's going to try to outrun it. 20. 10. 5. 99 yards.
It would be bombs away for most of the season as the Canes continued to impress with a rout of Houston, which came into the Orange Bowl ranked 10th in the country. Miami won convincingly, 40-10, as Torretta outplayed Heisman favorite David Klingler, displaying an awesome arsenal of weapons. After defeating Tulsa and Oklahoma State, Miami engaged in a real blue-collar war at the Orange Bowl against Joe Paterno's Penn State team. It would again be Williams who provided the spark with a spectacular 91-yard punt return in the third quarter.
Inside 15, 20, gets to the 25, beats a man 30, 35, 40, foot race, 40, 30, 20, he will go all the way, 90 yards, Kevin Williams, he has fulfilled his promise, he said he would go all the way with it, he has done it.
That play, coupled with Torretta's bombs to Lamar Thomas and Horace Copeland, gave Miami an insurmountable advantage. The Canes were able to hold off on rushing Penn State with a defensive stand late to remain unbeaten. Three more wins would follow before yet another 1-versus-2 showdown in Tallahassee with arch-rival and top-ranked Florida State. In what was rightfully deemed the game of the year, Miami got an early touchdown from Stephen McGuire to show the Seminoles they could not be intimidated. Defensively, the Canes would punish the Noles for every yard they got, but Miami found itself trailing 16-7 entering the fourth quarter. After a Carlos Huerta field goal cut the margin to 6, Miami began to drive for the winning score with less than 4 minutes remaining. With 4th down and 8 from the Seminole 13, a number 1 ranking hangs in the balance.
With Larry Jones behind him. Gino looking, throwing, caught Copeland, 3-yard line. 1st and goal, Miami. They finally found Horace.
Larry Jones' touchdown would give Miami the lead to cap another incredible Canes comeback, but the victory would not be sealed until a final FSU field goal attempt.
It is down, it is kicked, it is in the air, it is no good. He missed it.
Incredibly, the Miami Hurricanes had defeated a number 1 ranked team for the 8th consecutive time, setting themselves up to play for their 4th national championship in 9 years. After defeating an upset-minded Boston College team on the road the following week, Miami ended the regular season with a win over San Diego State before facing Nebraska in the Orange Bowl as the nation's number 1 team. In almost customary fashion, the Canes downed the Cornhuskers 22-0 behind an MVP performance by Larry Jones. Jones rushed for 144 yards on 30 carries, and Gino Torretta accounted for 257 yards through the air, connecting early on an 8-yard scoring pass to Kevin Williams and on a couple of bombs to Lamar Thomas along the way. A 12-0 campaign gave the Canes the Associated Press National Championship, as Washington also went unbeaten and was rated 1st in another poll. It would be a burning issue about the championship, sparking talk about a playoff. But for the time being, the Canes would have to be content with their share of the title, the 2nd national championship in Dennis Erickson's 3 years at Miami. In 1992, Miami again was at the apex of the college football world. The team, however, would have to contend with numerous factors that would have decimated a group of lesser character. Hurricane Andrew demolished much of the area south of the university's Coral Gables campus and had direct impact on the coaching staff and many of its players. Despite the ravaging effects of the storm, the Canes trained for a week out of town and prepped for a big opening test against Iowa on the road. In that game, Gino Torretta, who would go on to have a Heisman Trophy winning season, was brilliant, completing 31 of 51 in the face of a fierce pass rush for 433 yards and 2 scores. After Miami walloped Florida A&M in the Orange Bowl, they nearly saw their phenomenal 46-game winning streak come to an end. An Arizona team that would go on to a national ranking after defeating Stanford and Washington came into the Orange Bowl unheralded and overlooked. But the nation took notice as the Wildcats had a chance for a monumental upset.
Snap, place, kick, it is up in the air, it is, and Arizona, no good! No good! No good!
The Orange Bowl winning streak and mystique remained firmly intact. But the Hurricanes would lose their #1 ranking just before the annual showdown with the Florida State Seminoles. The Miami-Florida State matchup has become widely regarded as college football's greatest rivalry. It was no different on October 3rd, 1992, in a sweltering Orange Bowl, with 77,338 in attendance. The third-ranked Seminoles would come into the game hungry for a win against Miami, which has just slipped to #2 behind Washington in the polls. After a 94-yard return of the opening kickoff gave the Seminoles a 7-0 lead, the Miami defense would not allow the FSU offense in the end zone all afternoon, as Hurricane defenders would sack Seminole quarterback Charlie Ward on 7 different occasions. Gino Torretta's 29-yard pass to Coleman Bell gave Miami a 10-7 lead, but Florida State's Dan Mowry kicked 3 field goals, and FSU held its 16-10 cushion well into the fourth quarter. For the second consecutive week, the Miami winning streaks at 21 games overall and 47 in the Orange Bowl were in jeopardy. Then, with 6 minutes and 50 seconds left in the contest.
Now the Hurricanes with Torretta on the take on the drop back, coming after him. Fires it deep long. Lamar Thomas, touchdown Miami! Lamar Thomas!
Gino Torretta and Lamar Thomas would electrify the 5th largest crowd in UM history and leave the Seminoles stunned. Florida State was now desperate for a big play of their own, but the Miami special teams would not allow it. Punt returner Corey Sawyer's illegal pass from the end zone resulted in a safety and a 3-point Hurricane advantage that seemed insurmountable until the final drive. Charlie Ward frantically moved the Seminoles to the Miami 22-yard line, where there was only time for a game-tying field goal attempt by Dan Mowry.
Down, it is kicked, it is in the air, it is heading on, it is wide to the right! He missed it again, it's over! It is over!
For the second consecutive year, Florida State would lose to Miami. Wide right. The Hurricanes claimed their 7th victory in the past 8 years over the Noles and took the first step to recapturing their #1 ranking. The next week in Beaver Stadium, before more than 96,000 spectators, the Hurricanes tried to follow their emotionally exhausting victory over 3rd-ranked Florida State with another monumental effort against #5 Penn State. The hostile atmosphere and the undefeated Nittany Lions seemed to have many expecting a Miami defeat. However, this is just the environment in which the Canes thrive. The devastating Hurricane defense held the Lions in check throughout the first half as the Miami offense relied on its ground attack, highlighted by Donnell Bennett's 10-yard touchdown run. Down 10-0, Penn State began the second half with a touchdown drive to narrow the gap to 10-7. But the rest of the afternoon would belong to the Miami defense, which would strike a major blow at the end of the third quarter. Jesse Armstead's fierce rush forced an interception and touchdown return by junior defensive end Darren Crine and gave the Hurricanes the margin they would need. The Hurricanes had faced what ABC announcer Keith Jackson called the toughest task I've ever seen in 40 years of broadcasting college football, playing Florida State and Penn State back-to-back. And Miami beat them both. The Hurricanes would reclaim their #1 position in both polls. Miami rolled to 4 more wins after the Penn State game before meeting yet another challenge on the road against Big East rival Syracuse. After the Canes' early dominance in the Carrier Dome, a late resurgence by the Orange running game brought Syracuse back into contention. In a season of last-second heroics, it was the defense that would make the ultimate stop.
5, 4, 3, last play of the game. Graves gone for the bomb. It is Gedney with the catch. The ball game is over. Gedney caught it. He was 3 yards short. And Miami wins this football game 16-10.
That victory was followed by a blowout of San Diego State and set the stage for the Canes to partake in a 1-versus-2 matchup in the first year of the Bowl Coalition to decide the national title. The opponent, SEC champion Alabama, was also unbeaten with a standout defense. It was the 7th time in a decade that Miami had a chance at the national title on New Year's Day. But despite holding Alabama to just 18 yards passing and outgaining the Tide overall, another Miami championship just wasn't to be. "10 years and 4 national titles, however, represented one of the greatest achievements in college football history. The Canes were on the map for good and had many significant accomplishments. In the past decade, the University of Miami Hurricanes featured 2 Heisman Trophy winners, 1 Outland Trophy winner, 1 Thorpe Award co-winner, and over 70 NFL draft choices on their way to 4 national championships. With more first-round picks and more picks in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft than any other program in recent years, the University of Miami has truly become a pipeline to the pros. But the definitive statement that certifies the Hurricanes as today's college football dynasty is the fact that they have finished in the top 3 in the national polls for 7 consecutive years, a standard of excellence unmatched in college football. And the future would be paved by the entry into the Big East Conference, an emerging power that would virtually bolster the Canes' chances of earning future championships.
I think the Big East Conference is going to be a great conference. It's going to take some time just to develop some traditional rivalries. We have one right now with Syracuse, West Virginia, awfully good football team, Virginia Tech. And I just think it's going to be one of the better conferences in the country in the next 4 or 5 years.
Strategically, 2 earlier elements had sparked the Canes to college football supremacy. First, Howard Schnellenberger's installation of a pro-style passing attack on the collegiate level.
When you start thinking about the University of Miami in 1979, when we had 4 offensive linemen that no other college in America would probably have taken, when you have a quarterback of the caliber of Jim Kelly already in the stable, you've only got one way to go. And the beauty of it is that it dovetails with my beliefs and my background, so that we can take a group of not the greatest talent in the world, and we can move the football and score points and have a chance to win, coupled with the fact that this is the type of offense that will draw people. It was the only way to go.
And Jimmy Johnson's emphasis on defensive speed to win games.
I think in 1986 is when we really started to establish ourselves defensively. We had some outstanding individuals that could really run, had great speed, and because of that speed, we were able to overcome any mistakes that we might make and really could cause havoc with any opposing offense. You know, I felt like that we could recruit speed because of our locale being in South Florida and because of the attractiveness of University of Miami to probably players that would like to be in that environment, inner city kids that wanted to be in that atmosphere. Those individuals came in and gave us the speed that we were looking for, and I think that tradition is carried on at Miami with great defense.
These innovative football philosophies were further reinforced and refined by Dennis Erickson, who would take it a step further with the installation of a one-back offense.
The thing about the one-back is it spreads the defense out, and when you spread the defense out, you can see exactly what they're doing defensively. It's a lot easier to audibilize, a lot easier to see what kind of defense they're going to be in, and it just spreads people out and gets you in one-on-one situations, not only in the passing game but also in the running game. And To me, it's the offense of the future, and it's in an offense that's very, very good.
But ultimately, it was the players that should be paid tribute. The bright stars who went on to shine in the National Football League, and the special talents who would see their football playing days end at Miami, but would share in an experience that would shape their lives forever. The legacy will linger long into the future. The great quarterbacks, tremendous defensive players, speedy, talented wideouts, hard-nosed, tenacious backs, the unsung heroes along the offensive line. The memories have left an indelible impression, and the foundation has been etched in stone. As University of Miami football looks toward another decade of dominance.